Welcome to The Explainer. You know those moments when a kid has a really big emotional outburst? Today, we're diving into why that happens and how a surprisingly simple change in classroom design might just hold the answer.
So, let's kick things off with a big question. When a child acts out, throws a toy or starts shouting, are we just looking at bad behavior, or is there something deeper, something biological going on?
To get to the bottom of that, we first have to understand something pretty fundamental. On average, male and female brains have some real architectural differences. Now, it's super important to remember, we're talking about general tendencies here, not hard and fast rules for every single person.
Okay, let's get into it. Think of the brain's connections as a neural superhighway. On average, the female brain's architecture often has more connections, a lot more crosstalk between the two hemispheres. This is great for things like multitasking, and, crucially for our topic, for putting emotions into words. The male brain, on the other hand, tends to be a bit more compartmentalized, which is fantastic for intense, single-task focus.
And get this, the corpus callosum, which is basically the main data bridge between the brain's left and right sides, can be up to 20% larger in females. That's a physical difference that literally enables more of that cross-brain communication.
And it's not just the brain's internal wiring, it's also about how we take in the world through our senses. There are biological tendencies here too. Females often have better vision in dim light and higher auditory sensitivity, while males tend to have an edge with vision in bright light and are naturally wired to track motion.
So here's the bottom line. This isn't just about who's paying attention, it's a biological reality we often miss. That kid who seems to be ignoring the instructions, he might simply be struggling to hear them clearly in the first place.
Okay, so we've got these differences in wiring and in our senses. Now let's connect the dots and see how this creates two very different pathways for processing big, overwhelming emotions. And this really illustrates the whole idea perfectly. When faced with a strong feeling, there's a tendency for that emotion to travel upward, into the language centers of the brain. We see this often in girls, and it results in verbalizing, saying, "I feel sad." For boys, there's a tendency for that same emotion to travel downward, into the body, sparking a physical fight-or-flight reaction.
And this is the key takeaway, maybe the most important one today. That physical action, the push, the running away, the thrown object, it isn't necessarily aggression. It can simply be the only escape valve available for a massive feeling that doesn't have words yet.
And you can probably see where this is going. This is where a huge problem starts, when our own social biases kick in and lead us to misinterpret these completely natural biological tendencies.
We fall right into what's called the stereotype trap. Instead of seeing a child who just needs some help processing an emotion, we put them in a box. We slap a label on them based on how they're expressing that feeling. Now here's how this trap actually works. And it's pretty sobering. We punish that downward physical route, and we label it aggression. And at the same time, we often dismiss the upward verbal route as just drama. And the real world's consequences are serious. We see things like disproportionately high suspension rates for active boys, who are, in many cases, just physically processing their feelings.
But what if we stop trying to change the child, and instead we change the environment? What if we could engineer spaces that actually support these neurological needs instead of punishing them?
This is where design becomes the solution. Just look at this classroom floor plan. It's intentionally designed to work with a child's biology, not fight against it.
And this whole idea is achieved through three key strategies. First, a visual one, with both dim and bright zones to meet different needs. Second, an auditory strategy, using smart seating arrangements for kids who might have lower auditory sensitivity. And third, the emotional strategy.
At the very heart of this emotional strategy is the decompression zone. Now, this is not a timeout corner. It's a safe, calming space. Think soft beanbags, a cozy canopy, and warm, dim lighting. It's a place designed specifically to help a child's amygdala. That's the brain's emotion and threat detection center, to just calm down and regulate itself when it's totally overwhelmed.
Okay, now let's see how this builds, because creating that safe space is the critical first step. The next step is giving children the tools to actually name what's happening inside of them. And this is where tools like these persona dolls are just incredibly effective. They're specifically designed to help a child build a bridge from that downward physical feeling to the upward world of putting things into words. So instead of asking a distressed kid, "What's wrong with you?" which can feel like an accusation, an educator can pick up a doll and ask, "What is Nick feeling right now?"
This creates a safe proxy. The child can talk about the doll's feelings, essentially practicing the language of emotion without the pressure of a direct confrontation. So let's recap. We've seen that male and female brains tend to have different wiring patterns, and this leads to different emotional routes, one that's more verbal and one that's more physical. We've also seen how the stereotype trap unfairly punishes these differences. But through intentional design like the decompression zone and with clever tools like persona dolls, we can support regulation and teach all children how to give their emotions a voice. And all of this leaves us with a really powerful final thought. What if much of what we've been calling bad behavior in children isn't a character flaw at all, but is simply a design problem, just waiting for a better solution?
The research for today's explainer comes from sources on developmental neurology, anti-bias education, and the persona doll methodology. Thanks so much for watching.